Today we're going to talk about organelles. And organelles you can think of as little organs inside of a cell. So there's two main types that we're going to be talking about today, which are animal cells and plant cells. Animal cells and plant cells tend to be very similar, but they do have differences that we're going to point out today. Organelles perform functions very similarly to organs, or how organs perform functions in your body. And we're going to talk about those. So, our first organelle that we're going to talk about is called a cell wall. And the cell wall is found only in plant cells. I'm going to go ahead and draw that on there. Now, I'm not going to label it because it gets very confusing. So I want you to listen and look when I'm telling you the organelles so that you can see where they are in our cell. We will be drawing these in class as well. So the cell wall is found only in plants and provides structure and support for a plant. We've talked about the cell wall before when we did our pectinase lab. Remember that cell walls are made out of cellulose and pectin, and it gives the cell support and structure. The next organelle that we're going to talk about is called the cell membrane, or the plasma membrane. And the cell membrane, or plasma membrane, is found both in animal cells and in plant cells. The plasma membrane, or the cell membrane, lets things like oxygen, carbon dioxide, and food in and out of the cell. So it tells things what can and cannot come in. The next organelle we're going to talk about is the nucleus. And the nucleus is very important because it keeps our DNA safe. Outside in the cell, it can be pretty dangerous. Sometimes the cell membrane will let things in that's not supposed to come in, and we need to keep our DNA safe. Because our DNA is what tells our cells to build the right proteins. And by building the right proteins, it makes me, it makes a cat, and it makes a flower. If our DNA gets messed up, then lots of things could get messed up. I could have an arm growing out of the side of my head, if that's what my DNA were to tell my cells. So our nucleus is very important in keeping our DNA safe. So it holds the DNA. The next organelle is called the nucleolus, and it stores proteins and RNA that make ribosomes. The nucleolus is located inside the nucleus. And it's important that it has proteins and RNA in it to make ribosomes, because ribosomes are the workers of our cells. So let's go ahead and put that in there. And ribosomes build all the proteins. I'm sorry about that. My light turned off. There we go. So ribosomes build all of our proteins, and they exist both in plant and animal cells, just like our nucleus, just like our nucleolus, and our cell membrane. So far, the only difference we have is between our animal and plant cell is our cell wall. So, next we have centrioles. Now, centrioles are only found in animal cells. I always draw my centrioles like trash cans, but they don't have anything to do with trash. They help in cell division. They will build fibers that split the cell apart. Next up, we have what we call the Golgi apparatus. And you might hear the Golgi apparatus referred to as the Golgi body or the Golgi complex. But the Golgi apparatus, or Golgi complex, is found both in plant and animal cells. And it packages and sorts proteins that are ready to be shipped out of the cell. So our ribosomes, which I tend to think are really cute because they're little black dots, build our proteins. They get used in the cell, and then when the cell needs to ship some of those proteins out, it goes through the Golgi apparatus that prepares it to leave the cell. Next we have the endoplasmic reticulum. And the endoplasmic reticulum has two parts. It has the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has ribosomes in it, and then it has the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum is found both in plant and animal cells, and it transports proteins within the cell. So the ribosomes are building our proteins, and then the endoplasmic reticulum will take it like a conveyor belt throughout the cell. The mitochondria is very important to both animal and plant cells, but primarily animal cells, because the mitochondria is where respiration occurs. So respiration is what provides an animal cell with all of its energy. It takes in sugars and breaks it down into what we call ATP. And ATP is just energy. You can use energy and ATP interchangeably, and when we get to respiration, we'll be talking more in depth on ATP. Animals tend to have more mitochondria than plant cells because animal cells get their energy through respiration solely, whereas plants can get their energy through photosynthesis, which occur in a different organelle. So much like the mitochondria, the chloroplast is what provides most of the energy for a plant cell, and it is the site of photosynthesis. So when we say that a plant takes in sunlight, it's the chloroplasts that are receiving that sunlight and the carbon dioxide that produce water and sugar. Oxygen and sugar. Okay. Next up, we have a lysosome. And lysosomes are essentially little packets that break down molecules within a cell. And their little packet is full of enzymes. And we know all about enzymes through our lab that we just finished. And these guys will also help in breaking down the cell when the cell is programmed to die. An organelle that is very similar to a lysosome is called a peroxisome. And peroxisomes will break down molecules in a cell as well, and also help break down invaders like bacteria or viruses. Lysosomes and peroxisomes are very similar, except they have different enzymes in their little packets. And then we have two left. Okay, so the last two that we have are vacuoles. And vacuoles are in both plant and animal cells and are used for storage. So in animal cells, we tend to have small vacuoles that'll hold sugars or fats or water. And in a plant, there tends to be one large vacuole. Let me see if I can draw it around the other organelles here. That stores water. Now in my drawing, I kind of drew my other organelles pretty big, because this vacuole would probably be the majority of the cell. So animal cells tend to have a few small vacuoles, whereas a plant cell has one large vacuole, typically full of water or sugar. Animal cells have certain cells called adipose cells that have large vacuoles full of fat molecules. Now, the cytoskeleton within a plant and animal cell are strong fibers that hold organelles in place. So you could think of that as like lattice work that holds everything in place, or scaffolding maybe. So it looks very similar to this, just long fibers that's going to hold everything in place and hold the cell together. But in between the cytoskeleton and the organelles, it's not just empty space. There's something called cytoplasm, and it's the goo that surrounds and holds the organelles. So all of this white space here, if you can imagine this lattice work being put in there, all of that white space is going to be cytoplasm, or the goo that kind of fills up the cell. And I know it's not on your list, but if you could write cytoplasm in at the bottom there, that would be awesome. So we're going to be talking more about what these organelles do and how we can remember them in a cell. And that's all I had to tell you. So thank you for doing your homework, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your night.